Hello everyone and welcome back to the Restricted View podcast.
Hello everybody, we are back after a short hiatus while we were on holiday.
Yes, but here we are to review another show for you. And as always, I'm Deborah.
And I'm Chris. I was wondering if we were going to do that this time.
Yeah, we should always do it. You never know who's listening.
In case you don't know who we are.
Yeah.
But how could you not know who we are? We're famous. We're the most,
not.
We're the most famous theatre reviewers in London. Yeah.
We're definitely the most famous theatre reviewers.
By the name Restricted View.
By the name Restricted View in this building.
Yes, that's
so
true.
I think.
And we live in a flat, so there's lots of people in the building.
Yeah,
so
I know.
That's quite an achievement.
Exactly, yeah.
But yes, we have a review for you this week, not as always, but as very common at the moment, because we are still, as we continue to catch up with our backlog of reviews, more shows come out that we have to go see.
Yeah, so this one we actually haven't seen that long ago. It's one of the recent ones, but we decided to talk about it because it's actually closing on the 2nd of July, so you don't have that much time to go see it.
Exactly, because it is part of the OpenAir theatre.
Yeah, it's part of their summer season, yes. Yeah. And this one is it's a bit of an odd choice for the OpenAir theatre, everyone seems to think. They usually put on different productions, and I think this is part of their attempt to bring in new audiences to the theatre.
Why it's an unusual pick. They've done all sorts of things.
I know, but
they did Peter Pan, they did Little Shop of Horrors.
Well, I know, but this is what I keep hearing. I don't know. But there you go. We are going to review Legally Blonde, if that wasn't clear yet.
Yes, so Legally Blonde, the musical at the Open Air Theatre in Regent's Park, London, playing until
the 2nd of July. So, book soon if you don't want to miss out.
Yes, and this is directed by Lucy Moss, who is, you may know from Six, co-writer and co-director of Six. It stars Courtney Bowman.
Courtney Bowman as Elle Woods. And you probably know this, but Legally Blonde is actually based on the 2001 film with Reese Witherspoon. It's a very famous film, very popular. And the musical, I think, was on Broadway a few years ago, and this is kind of its revival.
I say easily 10
maybe
years
a decade ago, yes.
I do remember it popping up. I never knew anything about it really, but I do remember in my theatre circles many years ago, people talking about it, and it had that air of a cult hit. People were kind of saying it's so good. Those who had seen it, but most people hadn't seen it or hadn't really interacted with it. But cult hit is definitely the way I would describe my perception of how it went down. Yeah,
so you're correct. I think it actually premiered in 2007 in San Francisco, then Broadway, 2009 in the West End, and this is its first kind of major revival. And when you call it a cult hit, I kind of understand what you're saying. I think it's being seen as a kind of the first of this kind of new batch of shows based on films and kind of popular, kind of focusing on teenagers, like Mean Girls, the musical, and like other musicals that have come since then. So yeah.
Is there a Mean Girls musical? Maybe
there is a Mean Girls
musical. Is there?
Musical. Yes.
Is it good?
I don't know, but I think it's one of those that people love and hate. So
yeah. Well,
hopefully you'll come to London. We'll be able to see it.
So as I said, I didn't know anything about this musical. I mean, I had seen the film many years ago. That's one of those films. Do you know? I'm sure everyone has these films that you think you have actually seen every moment of footage in it, but never in the right order. I'd seen the middle of it once, and then the start of it once, and the end of it a third time.
Yeah.
Well, so Deborah and I did watch it.
I rewatched it.
Yes, you watched it, and I watched it in its entirety, possibly for the first time. Maybe not. Maybe I'd seen it all the way through. Anyway, I watched it. We both watched it. The week before, the day before we saw it. Possibly, was that before?
Yeah, the couple of days before. Yeah.
It might even be the night before.
Yeah.
Yes. We. So I knew nothing about the music itself. I just knew what the plot was going to be. I was interested in how some things were going to be changed and updated. Perhaps some slightly unsavory characteristics of the original production. I'm not talking about a man in power trying to exploit a woman. That's just a plot point, and that's a plot point that can, as long as that can be delicately done. But
other aspects of it that would have been fine back in the noughties,
yes,
and aren't fine anymore.
About.
Yes.
Not sensitive topics, but more things that were handled indelicately.
Yeah.
That our modern sensibilities would not like so much. Well, I suppose we'll talk about that later. But so first and foremost, we talk about the cast.
Yeah.
I think for me this is a relatively short
section.
Well, yeah, because I would unfortunately call the cast distinctly average. No one particularly stood out. And if I was to be completely honest, I think Elle's vocal performance, Courtney Bowman's vocal performance, was a little bit weak. I don't think she quite had the vocal chops. She wasn't bad or anything. But she just didn't. For a leading lady singing powerful numbers, it just didn't really hit home for me, I'm afraid.
I think my criticism of her is I think she's very charismatic and very likable as Elle, but I do think that she lacks a little bit of the. She's very confident throughout. And I think we need to see a little bit more of the other side of Elle. Like, we need to see her cracking a little bit earlier so we can sympathize, empathize with her a little bit more.
I think you're alluding to, not alluding to, I think what you're saying is very similar to what I was about to say. I think you'll probably agree with this statement in that case. Because I agree, she is quite charismatic, but she's not very nuanced in her performance.
No, exactly.
It's quite one-dimensional.
Yes, and it's a bit... but I think that's not... I don't know how much this is it's her fault or is the actual show overall as a problem.
Or the directing.
Well, we'll get to it. So I think it takes me... I didn't really feel for her. As much, not. So I don't really feel her plight. If you don't know, obviously, Legally Blonde's about this girl whose appearance, who society kind of deems to be defined by her appearance and the way she looks and behaves, and she's like, no, I'm gonna go and study law at Harvard to regain.
She's an Instagramming influencer type of person.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's all about the way she looks. She's blonde and therefore perceived as dim-witted.
Yes, and it was more of how others perceive her than who she actually is, and she tries to prove them wrong. First, for the wrong reasons, because she's trying to regain her boyfriend who left her, and then her motives kind of change as it goes, and she kind of learns that there's power in what she's doing.
Yeah, so her boyfriend essentially leaves her because she's not serious enough. And he wants to be go to law school, become a lawyer, potentially become a senator or something in the long run. Certainly,
politician.
Yeah, of some kind.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't see her in that future.
Mm-hmm.
So she tries to prove him wrong, which is kind of, I think, an odd plot point. But then she starts doing it more for herself.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately, nothing. As I said, the cast were mostly fine, but unfortunately, it's more the only really kind of notes I would have would actually be negative points. Unfortunately, there's no kind of there's no real positive. I'm like, oh yeah, that was really good. I also like to point the lawyer, her teacher, her lecturer, lawyer, boss man. I mean, pretty stiff and bland performance, I must say. That's
quite stiff would be how I describe it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was deliberate. I mean, Victor Garber plays him in the film and manages to get a lot more out of a very small role. Yeah, but
I feel like everything we say here, even it being about the actors or whatever part of the play, I think this has to be taken holistically. There's a holistic feel of things that went wrong in this show, in our opinion.
Yeah,
and they just don't really work. And we can try as much as we want to kind of pinpoint everything, but I feel like it's a combination of factors rather than individual things or people.
So moving on to the set, unfortunately, also probably an even shorter point for me. My notes say boring, pink nothingness, genuinely looked worse than what my school used to to do.
I really dislike it. I really dislike the set. When I first saw it, I actually saw a photo of it on the first night. Someone put it up on Twitter, I think it was. And I was like, oh, that looks really cool. My first impression, I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I also liked it.
But then I kept looking at it. And basically you have these tassels, right, all over the stage. But what really bothered me, the tassels are obviously mimicking Elle's hair, the braids that she wears, but then the ones that are further back are actually tassels. They're a photograph of hair cut in tassels. Someone
took a giant canvas photograph and then cut it into tassels.
It feels like the most last minute decision for a set that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Especially for a professional kind of.
And there's just nothing else to it. It's such a useless space. And then you can say, oh, it's the open air theatre. Yeah, well, you know what? Everything else in the open air theatre had pretty impressive sets, actually.
Yeah, they do have some extra bits some movable bits, that make her bed and stuff.
It's like just one large.
But it's very, very basic. I was not impressed.
Yeah, I genuinely, my school used to do better sets.
There you go.
The art students used to make better stuff than that. Lighting, I would say, yet more pink. Nothing impressive to mention. Even once it was evening, and obviously the show opens with daylight, but even the second act once it was evening, it was still just very much basic washes, which were which was swallowed by the pink set.
Yeah, so again, I it's so much pink. I wish I didn't have to say this because I love pink. It's too much pink. Too much pink. Didn't know there was such a thing. There is such a thing. It was too much pink. You could you actually, because obviously most of the characters are wearing pink as well. Yeah. Everyone kind of got lost in the stage.
Really should have been mostly her, shouldn't it? Maybe,
yeah, and also I think lighting should have done a different job in highlighting these characters. I think it was just unfortunately too much pink. Who knew there was such a thing?
Sound, possibly the worst I've heard all year. Possibly the worst I've ever heard in my life.
I would say ever. Yeah, it was very bad. Maybe it was the specific night we went. We went with a couple of friends, and my friend next to me, she said at one point, she was like, I don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And
I didn't either.
I didn't either. And the thing is,
most regular listeners will know Deborah is Brazilian, so her first language is in English, but obviously her English is flawless. My English is my first language. I couldn't understand what they were saying.
But the thing is, right? It's all fine if you know the lyrics, but I didn't know the lyrics. I didn't know this as a musical. I only knew this as a film. And I could not understand. So I think, again, and this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to bring back to when you talked about Courtney Bowman's performance. I don't even know if that was the case or the sound was really kind of hindering her, because there was the sound was. Look, it felt like I was watching this show from a fish tank.
Yeah, well, I remember saying this at the time as well. It sounded like a mono track coming out of a busted speaker. So it genuinely sounded like it had one channel only, and it sounded like the speaker was broken. Yeah,
and it's bad because, look, I've encountered problems in theatres being too close to the stage, because sometimes you can hear both the speakers and the actors. We were as far away as possible from the stage and actually really quite close to speakers.
Yeah, we were.
So that was not the case. It wasn't that there was reverberation or anything. It just sound.
There was reverberation.
No, there was, but it wasn't because I could hear twice.
Oh, I see.
It wasn't the echoing sound. It was just.
It was also that.
Yes, but so it was. The sound was very bad. I think is the worst part of it.
I don't know what else Tony Gale has done in sound design, but I think he might need to, revise.
Well, the thing is, right? I think this is something we've touched upon in previous reviews. My background's not in theatre. I don't really understand that much, but I understand it as a fan. But you do need to know your setting. You do need to know where you are. And
we said this so many times.
This is not a regular auditorium in a London theatre. It's not a small bar, theatre that is in the back of a pub. It's not. It's a very big open air space.
Yeah, and this whole production has that feeling kind of it'll be fine. Just do it. It'll be fine. Whatever, they'll pay for it.
It does have that feeling, yes.
Yeah.
even to the bar service.
Yeah.
Overall
that's
feeling.
That's a separate thing. Actually, it's worth talking about after.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. Costumes. This is where I tend to leave. As Deborah said, she hasn't got a professional or academic background in theatre, but she does know much more about costumes than I do. I would say again, too much pink. And also things like the Greek chorus. I mean, they were literally just wearing string tops and a skirt, weren't they? It was very boring.
Yeah, I didn't like the costumes. Oh my god, I don't want to be so negative. It's actually not so bad, but I did not like the costumes. I think they're very basic. I think it looked like they walked into Primark and bought everything that was on display that was pink and came out. And also found it very, very strange that Paulette, I think, or no, Pauline, I can't remember. Pauline,
I think so.
She wears orange. Don't get that. Why is she wearing orange? Why is she the orange person even though she's kind of on Elle's team? But then she has her partner, the Irishman she wants to fall in love with, whatever. He is wearing a high-vis jacket, which is orange. So I assume, my logic is like, okay, so it's because he wears that. So it was based on his jacket rather than whatever else.
Yeah, it's just a pair. It's a visual pair. It's a very basic 101 costume idea.
It looked, I mean, I think everything looked a bit childish.
Amateur is the word for it.
Yeah, amateur is the word for it. Yes, and then like the people in the school are wearing kind of very university, like the people who are very different from Elle wear these very kind of muted colors. And I don't know, it just felt very, very basic. It didn't really feel like there was a lot of thought behind the costume design. I'm really sorry if there was a lot of thought behind the costume design, but I feel there was no attempt to differentiate people.
No, it's all pink, right?
or not pink, right? So
pink or not pink. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a differentiation for you. Pink or not pink.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
The directing. So, I would say so bad I'm almost afraid to talk about it. Lucy Moss doesn't have a clue what she's doing. She completely sank in this. Her understanding of space is an entire joke. I think she was given this because off the back of 6, which she co-wrote
and directed.
Although it's a concert and she co-directed it, and I have a feeling the other person did most of the directing. And co-directing a concert that you wrote or co-wrote is about as far removed from solo directing a show in the open-air theatre by yourself. It's about as far away as those two things can get, while still technically both being directing. And I think this is the equivalent of stunt casting a director. She doesn't know what she's doing. I remember saying when we reviewed 6 that I had a lot of problems with the writing and the directing, but overall thought it was pretty good. And I think I said something along the lines of, this is their first outing.
Very impressive first outing,
yes,
right?
So if this was your 10th outing, you wouldn't be 6 would have been very much. I would have reviewed it less favorably. Mm-hmm. But for a first showing from new writers and a new team, I thought that's good, and I look forward to following their career. I will be actively avoiding Lucy Moss's career from now on. She doesn't know how to direct plays.
Okay, so as you know, listeners of the podcast, I'm usually a little bit less extreme than Chris, but I can't fully disagree with him on this. I think there's a lot of directing problems that even I could tell as an amateur. I don't know how she ended up directing this. It's very, and I think what Chris is saying is like there's a big difference between directing something that is 1, a concert, and 2, that you actually wrote, because you know it so well. And I think there's a knowledge of the script and of how of the moves of how things work that is very different from this, which is a revival. So you even have an extra layer added to it, which is the layer of this is well known already. What are we going to do that is different? How are we going to change it or not change it? Because you see, changing everything is not necessarily the best policy at all times.
So you say there's a lot of directing issues you could see. I actually, this sounds melodramatic. I don't even think that. I think that's almost giving too much credit. I actually think it's very hard for me. It's very hard to find specific things that she did badly, and the reason for that is it genuinely comes across like she didn't even direct it. As it really comes across that she just ran the scene a few times, had the actors do whatever they felt was right, maybe gave a note or two, and then moved on. Mm-hmm. I've been in enough things that I know what that looks like. She literally got them and said, okay guys, just from that scene, and they just ran it, and she was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Obviously this is purely, I'm speculating completely. I have no evidence to back this up, apart from what was put on stage in front of me. It genuinely doesn't feel like she directed it.
This is not my criticism, but I'm gonna quote him because I thought he was very, very much spot on. Mickey Joe from Mickey Joe Theatre. He has a YouTube channel, and you should follow him because he's great. He actually commented on the fact that the finale of the first act, where you have Emmett and Elle singing together, and it's Elle's kind of realization of what she can do with where she is, with her new position, right? They are kind of, there's this just juxtaposition, and he's helping her realize certain things, but it's not his song, it's her song. It's about her coming of age. It's kind of her development, right? She is backstage. She is high up, but she is backstage. It feels like it's his song. The way it was, he is in the front, he is talking to the audience is looking at him. She might be high up, but the audience is looking at him. So it felt very much like it was his moment.
This is what I'm saying, why it doesn't feel like she even bothered directing. She doesn't even have an understanding of like the most powerful position on the stage. She doesn't know anything about her. She makes it, what she put on stage in front of me demonstrates, it suggests she knows nothing about directing. Nothing.
And I'm sure that's not even the case. So I think that was just maybe a bit. I don't know how rushed this was. I don't know how it kind of went about.
I saw a quote from her in a interview, which I think betrays what she didn't know that she knows. I actually have a piece prepared.
Okay.
Which you finished talking about Lucy Moss briefly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
She will come back up at the end of this. But I have a piece prepared. So this show also has. I just wrote down a chunk rather than a note, just a short paragraph, because it's a delicate issue to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about it, and I don't want to be. I don't want to. I'd rather have it prepared for something as delicate as this. Mm-hmm. So. Legally Blonde features a wonderfully diverse cast that demonstrates that for all the leaps and bounds we have made in recent years towards diversity and inclusion, there is still room for improvement. It's probably fair to say that this production hits the mark, and even the most extreme person couldn't claim that it isn't diverse or inclusive enough. However, this is a difficult and delicate criticism to make. Despite being a good litmus test for an on-paper inclusivity and progression, it's also the epitome of how to simply tick boxes but fail on almost every count when it comes to being meaningfully progressive.
Is this yours?
Yes.
Is this your quote? Okay, I wasn't sure if you were reading from someone else.
No, this is my prepared paragraph.
This is
I'm not finished yet.
Oh, go for it. I'm so sorry.
So as I said, I think I want to repeat that. Despite being a good litmus test for on-paper inclusivity and progression, I think it's the epitome of how to simply tick boxes and fail on almost every count when it comes to meaningful progressiveness. Things are rarely good for the one. Oh my god, that typo is so bad. I don't know what that sentence means anymore. So ignore that sentence. Things are rarely good for the one's sake. What's that meant to mean? Oh, for their own sake, is it? No, I'm not sure. Things are really good for their own sake. I think that's it. Yes, things are really good for their own sake. For example, innovation for innovation's sake is pointless. Progression can, however, sometimes be the exception to this rule. Progression for progression's sake, whilst never as good as thought out progression, can still hold merit. Yet, Legally Blonde isn't even progression for progression's sake. It is a poor painting by numbers impression of what progression might hypothetically look like if done by someone more competent. Without wishing to get too much into nitty-gritty, I want to bring up the most glaring issue, just one, there's actually lots of them, but just this one, that demonstrates all so clearly that Lucy Moss simply does not know what she is doing. So I remember saying in 6 how it had issues, but for first showing it for writers and directors, it was okay, and I was looking forward to seeing them grow. But now I wish to actively avoid Moss. Sorry, I'm just trying to skip over bits I've already covered. This is the key point. How can you cast a black woman as the lead in Legally Blonde, a musical character and plot that is directly linked to the hair of the lead character, originally written as a rich, privileged white woman, and then make absolutely no attempt whatsoever to address black women's hair, or even the fact that a rich and privileged upper-class black girl would have had a very different relationship with the world and her own privilege than Reese Witherspoon's version of Elle. Lucy Moss cast a black actress and then spent the entire production pretending she hadn't. Not good enough.
So let's get into it then. Okay.
Well, I mean,
several things I think to talk about here. I agree with you. I think it's very surprising that it wasn't. What I know of Legally Blonde the musical, of its previous iterations, right? From the research I've done, they seem to have removed any mention and every mention of race from this current version. However, gay or European, that's still there.
Yeah. And also that's a horrible. That shouldn't be in it.
I don't know if it shouldn't be in it, but it's very It's a very strange choice when you've removed everything else.
I'm not quite with censorship. I think people who know me and regular listeners know I'm far from that. About as far from asking for censorship as one can get. But I just think it is a slightly disgusting song.
It may be. It is odd to keep that when you left so many other things out.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, I'm sure some of them were taken out for a good reason, and some of them I hear were just they weren't referring to anything bad, you know. So I almost feel like there's an attempt at being at not seeing color.
Yeah.
Which I think
and
that
I'd like to quote Gareth on the Superstore TV show. when he said, "Yeah, I'm not sure who started telling white people not to see color. I'm assuming other white people. The idea is not to see color." I don't know. Maybe some people of color would disagree and would say that you are supposed not to see color. No one I've met ever has said that.
I would like to see. I would like to hear from people of color regarding this production of Legally Blonde, just because and also kind of other minorities, because I'd be actually interested to learn a little bit more about the impact of this representation for representation's sake when you're not actually making any changes. Because I think this is a little bit of what this is, right? You have...
It was worse than that, though, because it's not just... Because it's this particular role, you can't...
No, and I wasn't even just talking about
this particular role
the main
has
role.
extra work required in order to make that cast decision appropriate and make sense. Mm-hmm. Like, you absolutely can cast Elle as Black, but you have to do it properly. Mm-hmm. And you have to put the work in. And what I find so bizarre is that even the wig maker clearly understood.
Yes, because she has braids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Lucy Moss doesn't understand, doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bizarre. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so...
There's literature on black women's hair.
Yes, don't touch my hair, Emma Deborah. My recommendation, as always. I think that I think what I was talking about wasn't just about Elle's casting. It was about the overall production. You have non-binary people, you have lots of people of color, you have it's a very diverse cast.
Yeah, as I said.
But what? So I think I'm 100% for that, and I think that should. I mean, I want to see more of that in the West End. But what do we do with it? Are we just doing so? How are we actually changing things? How are we actually telling these stories? Are we telling these stories?
Because maybe it's not telling a story.
It isn't. But and then at the same time, and this is kind of my other side thinking. I've heard many times, and that's why I love to hear someone from one of these groups kind of talking about this. But that it's not. It's very tiring and harrowing to have your whole life be dictated by these things. So sometimes you do just want to be in a kind of pink frilly musical to have fun. You don't want to necessarily have to think about these issues. But then again, I don't know how kind of that fits with Legally Blonde itself. Maybe another story should be told. And it's a little bit about how me particularly, Deborah here, I always kind of find a bit frustrating when people say, oh, the next James Bond should be a woman. It's like, no, just leave James Bond be whoever like he is and write another spy, write another woman. Like, yeah. write someone else to tell stories properly.
When it comes to the next James Bond should be black, I have spoken to two, well, actually more than two, but the two I've spoken to most in depth about is two black colleagues who have the exact opposite opinions.
That's interesting.
One of them thinks, oh yeah, that'd be great. One of them's like, yeah, that'd be great, that'd be cool, that'd be nice. Mm-hmm. And the other one was like, no, write a new character.
Yeah, so I tend to think that way when it comes to changing it. So gender swapping, but not always. And I think there is room to gender swap certain characters in the same way that there's room to gender swap the other way.
Yeah, and there clearly is a diversity of opinions on what.
Of course, of course,
as demonstrated simply with two individuals I spoke to. So yeah, we agree. We acknowledge it's not simple.
No,
but I think Lucy Moss went about this.
But it's very odd. It's very odd that it's not dealt with at all. And also she sings a song. They sing "Chip on My Shoulder," which I think, and Emmett is black as well. And I think he brings this kind of heaviness and kind of his position in the world into it. But then she doesn't. And I totally understand the social position, and she's she's above him socially. She's richer than he is, right? I totally understand that would have a major effect in her life. But what else has affected her position? What else has affected the way she is and behaves, and how she's seen and perceived by others?
I just feel like she never had that conversation with Courtney Bowman about about her character. Do you understand your character, where she's come from, etc., etc. I mean, I guess she's not in a great position. Lucy Moss herself is white, so I guess she's not in a great position to tell Courtney Bowman. No,
but she's in a great position to ask.
Yeah, but that's it. Her job is to draw it out of Courtney Bowman, not to dictate to her what her experience is. But as I said, Black Elle Woods had a very different relationship with privilege than White Elle Woods, surely.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But you see, all this is to say there's a lot of there are complex things about the plot, things that I thought would have been updated and weren't, not just race and like diversity wise. There are lots of plot points that I think are very odd to still be there. When you have such a diverse and like and kind of and like a interesting cast, and you
Yeah.
still keep some of these kind of naughty choices that really don't fit with our kind of morals and the way we look at the world anymore.
Gay
So
or European is basically homophobic and also anti-European. That the Irish song is I guess essentially a racist stereotype of Irish people. I mean, I don't care, but I find it funny. But you have to call a spade a spade. That is what it is. And but then but then they leave all that in, whilst having an incredibly wonderfully inclusive, progressive cast. But then not even having the decency to actually
address the
yeah.
difference, yeah. And I think we run the risk
And
here.
it's not just address it. It's not just. Sorry, to keep hold that thought. Not just address, as in put a signpost going. Oh look, isn't it great that there's diverse people in this? That's not what I mean. In fact, I never like that. I'm always a fan of putting these people in it and not making a big deal out of it. I'm not saying you have to make a big deal out of it. I'm just saying you have to acknowledge. It's the subtlety between not seeing color and not caring about color.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You should see it, but not care.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You have to see it, but not it doesn't change your opinion of the person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge that they have a different experience from you.
Exactly.
And this is what we've been
we-
fighting so hard to achieve. You know.
Exactly, and we literally put the entire musical pretending that Black Ale has the same experience as White Ale.
Yeah, I think that's a bit tough to. It's a bit tough to swallow. But
What was the thought I asked you?
Yeah, so I think this is a risk that we all run more and more. And I think I've always complained, for many years now, I've been complaining that whenever I see the stereotype strong female character in a TV show, I can imagine like a rich middle-aged white man in an office with a cheroot, with a cigar, saying, "Oh yes, they want strong female women. Let's give them strong female women." But they're not paying them the same. They're not respecting them. They're still like the Me Too movement is there for a reason. While strong female leads are there on film, so it's a little bit like that. I think we run the risk of having these shows being so full of representation, but not actually changing anything. And that is, I think, my main problem. Like you have representation just to tick boxes, as you said, rather than to actually make a change. So at the same time that I understand, I think it's been quite beloved by a lot of people, this show.
For the inclusivity reasons.
I think so, yeah. I think that's one of the reasons that is drawing people in.
But most people don't think about these things.
No, and I think it very much appeals to a younger audience who will go to the theatre for the first time and be able to see themselves represented there, which then fine. But then
that's good.
That is very good, and that's
why I was saying progression for progression's sake is rarely good, but in these circumstances, such as this, it can be.
Mm-hmm.
So just seeing yourself represented, that even if it's done poorly, at least it's something.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But as we're critics, and I'm going to critique if it's done badly.
Yeah, but again, and I think that this kind of brings us back to maybe these points wouldn't have been so strikingly difficult to swallow if the other aspects of the show had been better.
Yeah, it's true.
I think we would. I would have happily overlooked certain things, for good or for worse. I'm not sure, but I would have overlooked certain aspects of the plot and how it's being updated and being done if the sound, because for example the sound at times was so difficult to hear that I couldn't but think of my criticisms towards the show, because I couldn't listen to the actual song. I think if certain things had been better, maybe I would have forgiven these a bit more.
I'm just going to finish reading out the very last part of what I had prepared. I think we basically covered it. I hadn't intended to have a conversation in the middle of it, so this first sentence won't make sense. But I want to leave it there, as I know it's a very delicate issue, which I'm not qualified to fully speak about. But I hope that I raised it in such a way that you can all appreciate my point and my desire for a better form of progression. Just to clarify, I'm not mad that the actress was black. I'm mad that the production pretended she wasn't black. And for a musical that portrayed all manner of LGBTQ plus characters, relationships, and didn't care about conventional sensibilities, that's really poor form, to pretend that someone's not black. So aside from that, very briefly, Moss simply cannot get the basics of directing right. She had a vast stage to work with multiple levels and assisted in always cramming the action into tight spaces. It very much feels like she just ran... Oh, yeah, I had this written down. It very much feels like she just ran each scene, implemented one or two basic ideas she may have had, then moved on. I heard her say in an interview that she liked the way the set looks wrong initially, but then as the evening gets darker, it looks better in the stage lights, reflecting Elle getting more comfortable in her environment, which is a really nice way of saying I had no idea how to handle lighting, and she literally admits it. She admits in the interview that it was unintentional.
Really bad for people going to see the matinee.
Well, quite.
But
it wasn't intentional.
And this is we've said all this, and I know we're wrapping up, and we didn't even touch on the fact that the dogs were people. I mean, I can't even.
There's a really uncomfortable Pulp Fiction get the gimp thing going on with those dogs. It was really weird.
I don't even think.
They look like furries.
I don't think I'm prepared to talk about the dogs, to be honest.
It was just ridiculous.
But yeah, this is our kind of difficult review of Legally Blonde. I honestly went to the show really hoping to have a great time.
We were excited.
And unfortunately, it wasn't like, obviously the company was great. We were there with friends, and it was really great. We had a problem during the interval as well, because we were excited to try their specialty drinks that they made for the show. Chris did order the drinks, but they didn't come fully prepared as they should have been.
I paid for them and then found out that they're missing some of the ingredients. And in addition to that, Deborah and her friend went to the bathroom the moment the interval started, and has still not managed to utilise it by the time that the ushers were going around saying, you have to go in now or else you will miss the first song of the second act. So I took the manager aside and said, you can't do that, and I know you can't do that. The front house manager. And he maintained they could, but I did subsequently email the theatre, and they confirmed that they cannot. They kind of justify by saying that the ushers are obviously, and I understand this, the ushers are obviously trying to move people on, but I don't think you should use lies, threats, veiled pretend threats to do so.
No, especially because
also to have more toilets.
Have more toilets. That's actually what I said to them when they were saying that.
This is the first time ever, I'm afraid, I'm going to give a bad review to the staff of Regent's Parkway Theatre. You need to do better. Yeah,
it was a weirdly bad experience overall. But you know, we are still going back to the OpenAir Theatre again for their next production. Looking forward to it. I love the OpenAir Theatre overall. And if you're curious to see this version of Legally Blonde, it is on until the 2nd of July. So make sure to book your tickets. You can see from anywhere, so there's no real worry about tickets. I would say buy the cheapest tickets.
Yeah, buy the cheapest. It's not one
but I do not recommend, I haven't sat there myself, but I do not recommend getting the ones that are on the grass, because I don't think they look comfortable. I've seen people buying them, being very excited at first, and then, by the end of the first half, they're all knackered, looking like they can't support their backs anymore.
Well, also, in addition, I actually simply wouldn't recommend you go see Legally Blonde. We don't do star reviews on Restricted View podcast, but if we did, I would give this 2 stars, which is not recommended. Only to be seen if you have a significant interest in the particular aspect of it. Be you love Legally Blonde or love Courtney Bowman, or if you love Lucy Moss, don't go. It'll shatter the illusion. Basically, don't go. Even if you love usually my 2-star. Like I said, my 2-star means you can go see it if you have for a cheap price. If you've got a really invested interest, if you have something in it that will really speak to you, like I said. But the tickets even the cheapest tickets are too much to pay for this, and even if you loved the movie, I think you're better off waiting for a more competent production. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in that sense, I should probably give it 0 or 1 star. But I'll give it. I'll give the production the courtesy of acknowledging the things that it did do well, and give it 2 stars.
Yeah, I'm the same. It would be 2 stars, but obviously we don't do them. We do star ratings, so it doesn't matter. So And that's all for today. We actually talked about it more than I thought we would, because it turns out there's a lot to say. Yes, but we'll be back next time with, I think, another review, because we are going to a lot of shows. Even though I don't feel like we're going to that many shows.
Like we are, but I must actually do a tally for the year.
Yeah.
So far. We usually hit, as I say, 50 to 60 a year. I imagine we're on track for that. Have to have a look and see. We've got a few more coming up as well. But yes, so please do. But as always, we want you to comment and let us know what you think of Legally Blonde. But definitely for this one, because this is obviously quite a
harsh review.
Harsh review, but also quite a interesting and delicate topic as well.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you are from one of the minorities you're not qualified to talk about. I'd love to hear what you have to say as well.
Yeah. So yes, if you're watching on YouTube, please do smash that like button, like that smash button, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Not many people are listening on YouTube. Most people seem to be using podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, etc. But
they're on YouTube if you want.
But we're going to keep uploading to YouTube. So if you're one of the one or two people losing it, then we'll keep doing it for you. Don't worry. But do give a comment below and let us know what you think. Also on Instagram, head over and let us know what you thought of Legally Blonde if you saw it, or are you going to see it in the next 2 weeks, or have we put you off? And also check out Deborah's latest reel.
Oh yeah, do check it out. And we'll talk to you. You'll hear us next week.
Bye.
Bye.
See you more shows.